What's up, everyone? Bob's Blu-rays here, and today I'm going to be doing the Rad 9 Spooky Movies That Made Us challenge, presented by the Rad Pack. Make sure to go subscribe to them and go check out their videos. I will put their links in the description down below. So stay tuned, and I'll get into my Rad 9 right after this. Okay, so I'm not going to do my Rad 9 in any particular order. I'm just going to go through what I have, and it's not like, oh, this is number 1, this is number 2, and so on and so forth. Most of these were movies that I watched as a kid or something like that, but I'll try and give a little bit of a story behind each one. So let's go ahead and get started with the very first one, which will be High Tension. I watched this movie when I was, so what is this, 2003? Yeah, so it's 2003. And depending on what year, I was either 11 or 12 years old. And I saw this in theaters, and I think my dad was about to kill my mom was about to kill my dad for taking us to see this as a family. Extreme French horror. Now, this isn't nearly as bad as some other French extreme horror movies, but High Tension is pretty bad, especially for an 11-year-old to be seeing, especially for a family movie night. So yes, we went to go see this pretty much as a family, if I remember correctly. And like I said, I was 11. I mean, the movie opens with a guy giving himself like oral sex with a decapitated head. And I didn't even know what the heck that was when I was 11 or 12 years old. I didn't know what was going on. It's a pretty graphic movie, pretty violent, pretty gory. And it just scared the hell out of me. If you've seen the movie, you know the scene with the kid in the cornfields. They don't necessarily show what happens, but as a kid watching that scene, it like just the home invasion aspect of the movie, how graphic it was watching this dad and mom get just absolutely obliterated, violently and viciously. It scared the hell out of me. I liked horror movies. I loved horror movies as a kid. I got into them at a very young age, as you'll see. But some left an impact on me. Home invasion movies like this always left an impact. And they did it really well. Alexandria Aja, Alexander Aja, I guess. But he killed it. He absolutely killed it. The acting was great. It was suspenseful and just intimidating and very scary. And I thought it was well made, and it definitely belongs to be in my Rad 9. The very next movie I'll go over is going to be Joyride. Now, I'm not like Joyride nowadays doesn't necessarily scare me, but I think this movie still holds up really well upon a rewatch. It still makes me like feel suspenseful watching it. So I was, when was this, 2001? Yeah, so 2001. I was either 9 or 10 years old at the time watching this movie, and I remember we went to go see it at the Mall of America. You know, you just, like I talked last night on the Hall of Fame stream with Ryan, and he was talking about memories, and movies create memories that you just don't forget. You remember where you were, things like that, who you were with. And I remember being in the hotel room and watching a clip on like Good Morning America, or who knows what it was, for Joyride. And we were going to see it, and we were all just so excited. And it was one of those movies with the jaw being ripped off and just so much, like at that age, 9, 10 years old, it was so suspenseful, and it really did, it intimidated me, right? And I loved Joyride. I still love it to this day. Shout out to Pop's Movie Dungeon. I know it's one of his favorite horror movies of all time. But yeah, it's absolutely just a very suspenseful, intimidating movie, and very well made, very well done. And it's pretty terrifying, especially at a young age. Yeah, so that is my other Rad 9. That is, I think, number 2. Next up, we've got Urban Legend. Now, so there's 2 things about this movie, okay? Urban Legend that absolutely terrified me. The beginning, I was probably 7 years old when I saw this movie. So the very beginning with the killer hiding in the back seat. And then also when the guy goes to check the back seat and he's hiding underneath the car and he slits his Achilles tendon. I literally, when I got older, I would sometimes check my back seat. This movie made me check my back seat. And even at times, made me want to check underneath my car. This movie left an impact. I absolutely love this movie. All of the urban legends to it. It's just it's a classic from my childhood. Watched it at a very young age. Watched it almost on repeat, I feel like. Absolutely just love this movie, and it terrified me, and it left an impact. Those two scenes in particular, especially the beginning. So, had to add this to the list here. So that is number 3. All right, next one up is going to be The Strangers. Now, The Strangers is so well made because it's what year was this? This 2008. So I was like a junior or senior in high school when I went to go see this. And I remember seeing it with my dad and my buddy Chris, and I think one other person. But we all loved it. The scene where he's just standing behind her in the kitchen, like how that could be terrifying is magnificent. That you can just film a scene where you have somebody standing behind you and with no music, no action, no violence, right? But it's still terrifying. And that takes a lot from the director, right? To be able to do that, to be able to set that scene up and make it terrifying. So props to him for that. I love The Strangers. I think it's one of the best home invasion movies. Home invasion movies to me are very scary because they feel real. They feel like something could like that can happen. It is. It's very, very real. It puts you in their shoes. It makes it believable, and it's terrifying. And even the second Strangers, even as an adult, there were scenes that scared me. It's just a terrifying movie, and it's very real, and feels like it could happen to you. So The Strangers has to be on there for many, many reasons. Absolutely love it, but I cannot wait for the new trilogy that is coming in 2024. I hope they kill it with that. I think you got Ronnie Harlan, the director of like Die Hard 2 and Deep Blue Sea. I think he's doing it, so looking forward to that. And then next up, we have got House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, this was either 2001. Okay, so 2002 this was. So I was either, once again, 11 or 10 or 11 years old when I saw this movie. And it scared me for reasons, the theatrical experience in particular. Saw it with my dad, right? And there's just... this was the first Rob Zombie movie I had ever seen. And there was a scene in the movie, and right behind us, somebody like broke a glass bottle, and it just all of a sudden, like, there's this scary scene in the movie, and somebody breaks a glass behind me, and it was a weird theatrical experience. People were like moving around and making noise, and glasses breaking, and so it like added to the experience of being scared. And the scene where he just like freezes and shoots the cop, and there's so many incredible scenes in this movie. I don't necessarily love this movie. I didn't really like it, and neither did my dad when we first saw it. We both thought it was decent, but it wasn't like our cup of tea. And since I've rewatched it so many times and gotten to know more Rob Zombie movies, I've really appreciated this movie even more. But there are still elements that I don't necessarily love about the film. I like Devil's Rejects a lot more, but still a great movie. It just, the whole house from each character down, Captain Spaulding, Firefly, is that her name, or baby, whatever. But yeah, I think baby. But yeah, it was just vicious, violent, vile. And at that age, 10 or 11 years old, that's exactly what it was for me. And it was pretty terrifying. All right, next one up is going to be a movie called Signs. Now, there's one reason in particular I wanted to add this is because the alien walking across the screen for the first time is absolutely terrifying, especially at, 9, 10, 11 years old, once again, because this had to be around 2000 or 2001, I would assume. I don't see a year on the back of it here. But, yeah, absolutely terrifying at that age. I thought it was so, once again, intimidating. I keep using that word, but you see that happen, and it's pretty terrifying. And it's funny because when I went to go make my Rad 9, I originally didn't really think I could come up with 9 movies that scared me as a kid or anything like that. And then I started putting them together and I was like, okay, let me try and see if I could do this. And I was like, Joyride, yeah, that's a good one. And then I thought Signs, yes, that scene in particular terrified me as a kid. And a lot of it's super suspenseful and it's super well done. And I know some people complain about some aspects of the movie, but I really like Signs, and that scene in particular at the party with the alien walking by was just so terrifying. And even the scene where he's like, swing away or whatever. Like it's just, it was pretty terrifying movie as a kid to watch that. The next one up, I'm going to pick Halloween, 1978 Halloween. You can't go wrong with Halloween. I just recently rewatched Halloween H2O. It's always been my favorite Halloween movie until I rewatched that recently. I would put this actually as my #1 favorite Halloween movie. I think it's the best one. I love H2O because I grew up with it, but Halloween is the best Halloween movie in the franchise. It was terrifying. I was 6, 7, or 8 years old when I first saw this, and it terrified me to no end. Kind of like just with the stalking babysitters and everything like that. It really got me, especially once again 7 or 8 years old, watching that with the butcher knife. And it's funny because the first movie I saw before that was Scream, and they kind of referenced that, and Nightmare on Elm Street and a bunch of others. But yes, this would have to be up there. Love Halloween. It's great. I rewatched it last year, and it was even better than I thought it was. So that would be on my list as well. The next one up is a movie that I do not actually own. It is called If I Die Before I Wake. I wish I owned this. There is a DVD out there that I need to eventually grab of this movie. It is very hard to find online. And I can find pretty much anything, and I've struggled to find this one because I would like to rewatch it. It's a very quick, short watch. It's like an hour and 15 or an hour and 20 minutes long. It is another home invasion movie. Absolutely a home invasion movie. It takes all takes place in one house, one home. I would highly recommend this movie to anyone watching my video right now. If you are a horror fan or a home invasion fan, if you have not seen If I Die Before I Wake, you need to check this movie out. Here is the reason why it is on my list, and it was the first one that came to mind over anything else. I was 7 years old, 6 or 7 or 8 years old when I watched this movie. I'll say 7 or 8. We'll say 7 or 8 years old when I watched this movie for the first time. I remember where I was. We had a trailer we went to every weekend in the summer in Michigan. So parents would get the weekend off. We'd go and we'd hang out. It's a place called Fuller's Resort in Michigan. Blast. It was such a fun time for a kid. And we went to the video store every single weekend we were there. And we would come back and watch movies in the trailer at the end of the night. And we picked this movie, I think on VHS, and got back, watched it. Holy cow. So it starts really fast. In the first 4, 5, or 6 minutes of the movie, the people break into the house. I believe, if I remember correctly, there's 3 killers that break into the house. The main villain in the movie is actually the killer from I Know What You Did Last Summer, the original I Know What You Did Last Summer. It terrified me. It left me, I can't remember if I had nightmares, but I was scared to no end watching this movie because there are scenes in If I Die Before I Wake involving a brother that is, I'm going to try not to spoil this movie because I don't want to spoil it, but there are scenes involving a brother who is probably in his teens, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and he is just hanging out on his computer and stuff like that, and people break into the house, and there are scenes involving the mother that are extremely graphic, and the father, and it is a tough. Once again, I haven't seen this movie in ages, but at that age, it was a tough watch. I think I rewatched it 10 or 15 years ago. But so I don't want to get everyone's hopes up, but you got to put yourself in the shoes of a 7 or 8 year old watching this movie. That was a difficult watch to get through because this brother and the things that happen to this mother and the father and the sisters and oh my goodness. It is a very difficult watch at that age. And I don't want to spoil it, like I said, too much. But when you watch it, you'll understand where I'm going with it. Having to see that as a kid, as a son, watching this, a boy watching these things happen to this father and this mother. It's like, oh my goodness. It put me in their shoes, and I was so disturbed. And I really like this movie. I really, really hope it holds up when I get a chance to rewatch it. It has been a long time. I remember loving it as a kid and just being terrified. It is a quick, easy watch. It is fast-paced. It starts fast. It doesn't really let up, and it is very stressful. And I hope I'm not overplaying this movie. Don't get your hopes up so that I ended up, you end up disappointed. I really hope you enjoy this movie if you get a chance to check it out. Seriously, check it out if you're watching this. My very final one that I'm going to go with, though, is absolutely Scream. It is my favorite horror movie of all time. It's pretty much the first horror movie I ever watched, I believe. I was 7 years old. I think it was like 98 or 99, probably. Scream 3 was the very first slasher, first Scream movie. Pretty sure first slasher I ever saw in theaters. Not the first rated R movie. That would be Blade. First horror movie was Anaconda in theaters. But Scream was the first horror movie that I really ever watched. Like slasher, scary movie, things like that. That beginning of Scream, you're 8 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, watching this movie, maybe even as young as 6. I'm pretty sure I was 7. And my mom, every time my dad let me watch any of these movies, and there's other movies that could have made the list, my mom was ready to kill my dad. She was not happy that she found out I was watching these movies. My dad did not mind. He was like, shh, just don't tell mom. And he would rent them for me. He'd rent like 4 VHSs. Child's Play, Scream, Hellraiser, you name it. He rented like 4 for me to watch. While they were at work, and yes, my sisters were home at the time, but I was like 7 years old at home with just my 2 sisters who were probably 9 and 11 watching these scary movies on my own, and there were times I had nightmares, and my mom was not happy. Let's just put it that way. But yes, absolutely love Scream. Like I said, the opening, you've got the ghost face, and as a kid, like it's not necessarily scary anymore watching it. I've seen it over 100 times easily. I could quote the entire movie, but the opening as a kid watching that, the popcorn, the scary phone call, watching, oh my goodness, just everything. Steve get gutted, Casey Becker, I mean, her hanging on the tree, the faint with her throat. Oh my goodness, it's just it's incredible. It's perfect. It's one of the, if not the best horror opening to any movie ever, and there's a lot of good ones out there, but this holds up. It's definitely up there. It is terrifying. It is scary. As a kid watching that, it was absolutely terrifying. That beginning shook me. It left an impact, and it is the reason I fell in love with horror movies. My dad, Wes Craven, and Ghostface, and Sidney Prescott. Just all play a huge part in my role of loving movies and loving horror movies to this day. And I can't say enough about Scream. This video went pretty long. I do apologize, but you get talking, and you get talking about these movies and the memories and your passion behind them, and it's fun. And it's just nice to talk about them, and I really do enjoy all of these movies, and I enjoy talking about them. It brings me back. There's some really, really good memories, and it was nice to talk about them. I appreciate you watching. If you stayed to the end, thank you so much. I really do recommend some of these movies, a lot of them. If you haven't seen them, check them out. Once again, some of them might not be nearly as scary anymore in an adult age, older age, but try and put yourself in a kid's shoes, and maybe it'll scare you a little bit more. Some of these are classics that everyone has seen. But let me know what some of your Rad 9 scary movies that, made you are, and just different things like that. What you thought of my list, what you thought of these movies, things like that. I would love to hear. If anyone has seen If I Die Before I Wake, I would be shocked, and I would love to have a conversation about it and what that movie meant to you as a kid. But please, leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I will see everyone on the next one. Have a great rest of your day.